Hello and welcome to this Energy Diamond video on the Atmascape. As you can see, the image that we've got in front of us is from the website Social Vitamins, which has a little bit more detail on the Atmascape image than the one that's being used in energydiamond.com. Straight away you can see one of the options that's available to you is for you to visually change the colour scale. As you can see from this particular image, where the profile scores are mostly in the area of about 7 or 8, that corresponds to colours which are mostly blue. And you can see there's not much detail to be looked at or anything to be really noted about what the image is actually saying. And what would really be useful is to see if we could somehow increase the contrast of this image so that we can see more of the detail. Now the best way to do that is to change the colour scheme so that red actually represents whatever the lowest score was on this particular profile, and blue represents whatever the highest score was on this particular profile. That way the colours are more representative of the range of scores that have been put into this particular profile. It's more useful and relevant to the person who's just done the profile, rather than trying to put it on a scale that compares a person to absolutely everybody else. It's more useful just to see what are the colours relevant to what this particular profile has generated in terms of its scores. So if you want to change the colour scale, you can just click on the button at the top which says switch colour scale, and you'll see the colour scale changes according to whatever the lowest scores were and the highest scores were in this particular profile. This particular profile, the lowest scores are around 6 and the highest scores are about 8. And you can see it's much easier to see now where the lower limits are of my life currently and where the upper limits are, and that's easily identified by the fact that the red areas are the lower limits of my life in terms of the needs which I'm being able to meet, and the blue areas are to do with the areas I'm performing well in terms of how I'm meeting my needs. You'll also see that when you first come onto this picture, there's usually a red box highlighting a particular area of the image. In this particular case, you can see the area to do with how I help myself around my own psychology, vision and thoughts and feelings. It's highlighted. The reason why it's highlighted is because that happens to be the top scoring area in my life right now. And if you click on that top scoring area on the left hand side in the list of items that you can look at and what they're about in your life, underneath you'll see there's a little explanation of that area and what it actually means. In summary, this area is about my mental health, and I've scored 72% of the maximum score I could in this area. And you can see underneath there's a bit more of an explanation about what this area is about. It's saying that it's about my self-confidence, my self-esteem, it's about how I think, it's about my visions and goals, and how I go about searching for things that give my life meaning. The 72% score is literally saying I believe I've got 72% of what I need to look after my own mental health, especially in relation to perhaps whatever purpose I've got in life. Similarly, if you go to any of the other items listed here, for example, if you look at the people psychology zone, you can see that corresponds to the quadrant on the top right. It's how I help other people with their psychology, their vision and their thoughts and feelings. There are quite large areas here that are examined as well as small areas. The quadrants are the smallest areas, but you'll notice, for example, that the personal zone is quite a large area. It corresponds to 2 quadrants. How I help myself with my psychology and how I help myself with my reality. In a nutshell, it's really about how do I help myself. It's to do with that whole area, to do with how I go about meeting my own needs. So in terms of my ability to meet my own needs, you can see I've scored 72% there. And again, that means that I'm able to meet 72% of the needs that I feel are important for me to achieve my purpose in life. There's another region to do with obviously helping other people, and that's the area to do with people. That's a zone associated with people, the people zone. And you can see I'm scoring slightly less there at 70%, and again what that means is I believe I've got 70% of the capacity to meet my needs in how I help other people across all areas of their lives. Now you also see that there's an area called percentage of skills for purpose that doesn't seem to relate to any particular area of the chart, and that's because that relates to the average score overall for your profile. It's saying if you were to look at your overall score, remember you could have scored anything up to a value of 10 for each of your questions. There's 30 questions, so you could have scored a maximum of 300. And this percentage is basically saying, out of 300, what percentage did you actually score? And you can see I've scored 71% out of 300, which corresponds to about 210 out of 300. And that percentage means something very particularly. It specifically relates to, of all the skills I need to achieve my life's purpose, how many do I feel I've got? And you can see it's currently saying that I've got 71% of what I need to achieve my life's purpose and attend to the mission, if you like, that I've put myself on in this life. Again, if you look at the bottom, you'll see there's an explanation of that. It explains what percentage of your skills you feel you have to fulfill your life's potential, and the percentage is actually given there as well. At the moment, the scores are all ordered by ranking order of the percentage. So the highest score is at the top and the lowest score is at the bottom. In this particular case, you can see my lowest score is in the people reality zone, which is the bottom right. And you can see that's to do with how I help other people survive in the real world, how I am with them in terms of helping them get practically authentic for themselves and dealing with their welfare, their well-being and their wealth and their real world tasks, real world needs. That's the area I seem to be scoring least in at the moment. Now it's still 69%, which is quite high, but relative to my scores it's the lowest scoring area in my life. So currently, as I said, that's listed in order of percentage. Sometimes you want to see things in order of significance. For example, the most important score here is how you're doing overall. What percentage of skills do you have overall for going ahead and meeting your purpose in life? So this score to do with that percentage really should be at the top, and then perhaps the areas that are the next biggest and most important, like the personal zone for example and the people zone, maybe it'd be a good idea to have them second and third. So one of the things that you can do is you can click on these little buttons underneath the scores and underneath the zone to change the order of things. If you click on the zone button for example, you can see now everything's organised in terms of significance. The most important score of overall, what skills do you have to meet your life's purpose and meet the needs towards that, that comes up top. How you're doing for yourself comes up second. How you're doing in terms of helping others comes up third. How you're managing your psychology as well as helping other people with theirs, that comes up fourth. How you're doing with your own reality as well as helping other people with theirs, that comes up fifth. So the biggest areas come up first, and then the small areas, the quadrants, come up last in this instance. Okay. Now, that's a kind of guided tour of the actual image. There is additional explanations of all the respective areas further down. You'll see what the red areas, blue areas actually mean, and you'll also see there's explanations of each of the zones. You can just look at that particular part of the image and it'll tell you some information about what that zone on the image actually relates to. Now there are the zones on the right hand side here which are not currently visible. They are being created, and soon you'll be able to see how well you're doing in terms of meeting your social needs and how you're doing in terms of each of the need areas and whether or not you're scoring high or low in those areas, and also how you're doing in terms of learning to do with experiencing things, managing things and building and developing things for yourself as well as with others. So those scores will be made available soon alongside the scores that are currently visible here on the left. Now that we've actually looked through the overall image, let's actually have a look at interpreting what the colours and features on the actual image are, and we'll explore that in the next video.